We have planted the seeds and watered the Spring Football Talk Show garden with yet another edition of Spring Football Has Sprung. Eugene Uba with you. Glad to see you. Glad to be here. The playoffs here in a couple of days. The regular season went by in a blink of an eye, and we're going to talk a little bit about that last game, folks. I mean, how fun it was to watch the Kings and the Aviators this past Sunday. I'm going to talk about why that game really was a model game for this league, a way to cap off that regular season and the implications that that brings. I'm also going to dissect the attendance numbers of the regular season, really look at that and what that portends for the league and maybe a few teams that are in this league and maybe some that may not be around for much longer. And we are, of course, going to have our pick'em segment this time for the playoffs. But whoa, you heard that sound. You know what that means. It's a Spring Football Has Sprung alerts. Alert, alert, alert. Well, you guys have probably heard by now that the playoff game, the Defenders and Orlando Storm game, remember that Orlando clinched home field advantage. Now, that was going to be played in Columbus, but that is going to be played in Daytona Beach at Daytona Stadium. Mike Rapoli, some of you guys, you complain about his bedside manner, but this guy knows how to deliver. He pulls through in the clutch. And I mean, good for the league. Really good stuff. I think it's going to be great for optics. Um, Daryl Johnston, if he was still in this league, he would not have pulled off this deal. He really wouldn't have. And this is somebody, when you go into the season, I should say, going into this season here, the league needed to have attitude and you needed to have an alpha. Neither of those adjectives I would use to describe Daryl Johnson by any stretch of the imagination. So, congratulations to the Storm fans. I think that this should be hopefully a lot of fun. Orlando is a market that I've said before on a previous edition, you have to nurture that market. There have been 7 teams since the mid 70s that have came and went in terms of alternative football leagues. So Orlando, that market, that's kind of sort of a bit of a garden. You have to tend to it very, very carefully. So again, for the Storm fans, I think it is going to be great. I can't wait to see how that is going to translate. And really, it goes to one of the realities for this league, because now that this league are in multiple soccer stadiums, and of course, you still have um, 2 teams, the Stallions and the Battlehawks, that play in traditional football stadiums. When you are the secondary tenant, the third, fourth, fifth tenant, you're not going to have the pick in terms of dates. Now, remember the Inter Coast Stadium, that's being used for soccer. That's being, the upcoming World Cup, that sort of thing. There's an argument to be made that this could have been anticipated by the league. But again, when you are the third, fourth, fifth in tendency, you're not going to be really priority unless you have a little more influence. And hopefully down the line, yes, soccer is going to have, of course, priority in the soccer stadiums. But if the UFL gains more influence, and I think that it's starting to gain more influence if the television ratings are anything to go by, then that tune may someday change down the road in terms of getting favorable dates. But again, credit to Rapoli. Maybe the date situation may be better when the schedule is moved up, maybe post Super Bowl, like so many people have been clamoring, or maybe earlier in March. I know that there's the whole concern about March Madness, in which case I would build, if I was running the league, I would build a bye week to get out of the way of March Madness just a little bit. But again, credit to Rapoli. I think that really he has clearly demonstrated, in my view, that he has been the best thing to happen to spring football since Vince McMahon. I mean, people can say whatever about Vince McMahon, but look, Vince, he knew how to promote. He knew how to promote. So, but I think Rapoli really, I think without all the baggage of Vince, has been really, really great for spring football, as has been demonstrated by this past season. And speaking of great stuff, I mean, look at that game, the last regular season game, the Kings and the Aviators. Wow. I mean, that should not have been. I commented on the Twitter that that game should not have been as entertaining as it was because they were not playing for anything at all. Remember, the Kings, by virtue of the fact that the Stallions lost, and hey, Stallions fans, the league is not conspiring against you all, by the way. I've seen all the conspiracy stuff. This is the kind of stuff that will make Alex Jones blush. I mean, come on, guys, seriously. But really, when you think about how entertaining this stuff was, considering that the Kings have already clinched their spot and that the Aviators have nothing to play for, it was really, really, really great. I mean, you look at why I think this is, and I think there were two reasons why I really enjoyed the game. The first thing was, again, Columbus had nothing to play for. They are playing, as I think with all of these players, but especially a lot of those guys are playing for game tape. Okay, having tape to head into training camps in the NFL, maybe hopefully latch on to a roster, that sort of thing. Remember, one of the things that I think is so great and so appealing about this league is that the league is truly indeed a league of opportunity. I think when you look at one of the players in particular, Toa, I mean, look at this on the game, 5 yards per carry. I expect that he, among some of the others, are going to really get a lot of calls. We shall see how that is. People want entertainment, folks. People want entertainment. They don't want the listless stuff that Birmingham put up in their last home game. They really don't. You want entertainment. There's an audience. You think about audiences, right? There's an audience, yes, in the stadium, but there's also the audience of 32 NFL teams, GMs, executives, scouting directors. They are looking at these UFL games and they are trying to see who they're going to take on for camp, who could potentially make a roster. And even for a game that was as meaningless, relatively speaking, as it was, they still like to see a lot of effort. So I'm really, really happy to see that the effort was put on by both teams with nothing to play for. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me. The second thing that really also stood out to me as to why that game was really great was that even with nothing to play for in Columbus, and even with the worst record in the league, by the way, with regular season, worst record in the league, they attracted 11,000 people. There were 11,000 people in attendance there. And that was maybe, yes, maybe with an assist from the Kings faithful. You know, it seems that the Kings fan base definitely travels well, but still to get 11,000 in there is absolutely remarkable. And I think that it makes the situation in Birmingham, home opener notwithstanding, Gucci Mane notwithstanding, it makes that situation that much more jarring because remember, Mike Rapoli, he is a guy wants these soccer stadiums, wants to have the kind of support. The optics, I've always said this, intangibles matter, optics matter. And when you see how full, relatively full that stadium was, even with a team that had the worst record in the league, then this is the kind of support that you hope translates in a lot of these other markets. And speaking of attendance, let's go to the attendance and ratings dissection on this. And I want to give a bit of a shout out. I look at, our team, we look at Reddit for some of this stuff over here. And there's a guy called Guy on the Mic who really does these spreadsheets. I'm sure you've probably seen the spreadsheets that he does, and he's been doing them since the 2020 iteration of the XFL. So shout out to him for having these stuff and looking at some of these numbers. Compared to last year, St. Louis down 21.3%, DC down 30.9%, Birmingham down 6.3%, Dallas down 33.9%, Houston down 1.2%. Five teams above 9,000: St. Louis, Louisville, Columbus, Orlando, and DC. Looking at Houston, by the way, being down only 1.2%, some places you kind of may consider that flat. I think, given that that market has been jerked around so many times in the merger, I think that that could be seen as a win in and of itself. Um, and really, if you really think about this kind of stuff over here, I mean, they had a little bit of a bounce back a little bit towards the end there. So say that they have earned themselves another year on the back of this. Again, they've been jerked around so many stadiums, that sort of thing. I would keep them. I will keep them. And then Orlando. What is very interesting, Orlando is, for me, and I think really in this conversation, Orlando is a returning market for all intents and purposes. And I looked back at the 2023 number. When it was the Guardians, Orlando Guardians, that was 8,931. 8,931. 2026, 9,838. That's a 10%, little over 10% increase. And that's a very, very good thing. That's a very good thing. Again, I would consider that a win. Initially there was some concern about how that was in this in the initial going in Orlando, because if I look at those seats in the first few games, it wasn't looking so great. But there is a lot of potential, I think, in that market. And when you have somebody like Anthony Becht, who is the coach, and somebody who I believe is a real great advocate for this league, and if the Storm does end up winning the United Bowl, if they advance, which you'll hear my pick later in the pick'em. But if they are to advance to the United Bowl and win this, I think that it really is going to help the buy-in. That's the hope, at least. So credit to Orlando. I mean, that I like that market. I think there's a real potential. You've got to nurture that. You really do. 7 teams that have came and went. I think this Storm, the Storm, have got a lot of staying power. A lot of concern about the top 2 markets historically in the league, St. Louis and DC, being down. I think there are a lot of factors, outside factors pertaining to this. Yes, you could argue with a lot of the teams that have declined. Yes, gas prices. Yes, okay, maybe novelty has worn off, but I'm going to look at some of the factors here that I think are the case. Um, Definitely one thing, the concerts inflated a lot of these numbers. The concerts, they were almost like those $5 rotisserie chickens that you get at Costco. Those were loss leaders, and you would hope that the lure of those $5 chickens is to get you to buy other things at Costco. Well, most of the people that came to a lot of these games initially did not stick around to varying degrees. The worst was Birmingham. I mentioned on one of the other shows that the attendance, the retention of that was just close to a third on that, the worst in the league by a country mile. Um, and I think that when you strip the average of when you strip the concerts from the averages, I do think that that really paints a more complete picture of what the attendance really looked like for a lot of these markets. Um, you have to look at what's behind the number. It's not just, oh, read a box score and call it a day. You have to look at what goes behind it. And I think that Birmingham still, yes, they declined less than than some of these other teams, but I failed to be impressed with that mainly because of the retention. The retention again for Birmingham worst in the league. Um, and again, yes, novelty maybe wearing off for some of the stuff we've mentioned in DC. I think that that's a fashionably late market. Noon games, I don't think, at least on the Saturdays anyway, they had a nice bounce back on the last week's game. That was good. I think that the timing it doesn't work. I also don't think that sharing a marketer with Orlando particularly works. Dallas, the move to Frisco, I don't think that was really something that was very, very good. Remember that when they were in Choctaw, yes, the optics may not have been so great in in a big what was originally a baseball stadium, but I do think that they had, not I think, I know, they had very consistent attendance in Choctaw. So maybe that's a move that has to be made there. As I mentioned, Houston, I would definitely give one more year for them. I think that they certainly have earned maybe another year in this because of the whole jerking around in the merger. And again, I keep saying this, Birmingham, Gucci Mane, that was kind of sort of, I said on another show, it was kind of sort of like a meme stock. Very, very high, and then it all came really crashing down. And again, the concern for that market is I think really is the retention and some of the other factors that we have mentioned previously in this. Because when you win 3 times, the expectations, the reality is that those expectations are going to be higher. They really, really are. Um, so it's going to be a very interesting conversation, I think, in the offseason for where Birmingham is going to be heading. And it's not looking very, very impressive. And I also was not impressed with what AJ McCarron had to say in the presser.
Coach, a little over 5,000 fans attended today. Obviously, your job is just a coach, but what do you have to say about the attendance and fans overall?
Who counted that? Is that from the league?
That's from the league.
They need to fix the counter. If that's what they put out, something's going on there.
And I mean, like I said, it's your job to coach, but is there any suggestions that you would have to get more people?
I thought there was well over 5,000. I mean, y'all have seen these crowds enough. What do you think? 8,000? I'd say right around 8,000, 7 to 8, somewhere in there. Maybe the machine went down.
I don't think that statements like what AJ just made in that really help the cause. I don't think he is doing his team any favors in this regard. I mean, even suggesting, and I've seen the stuff on X, I've seen a lot of things from some of the Stallions faithful that, oh, the league is undercounting attendance. Oh, the league is counting Birmingham differently than the other teams in this league. Well, I'm going to throw out a saying from Judge Judy Scheindlin, who I think her show should be mandatory watching, by the way, that if something doesn't make sense, it is not true. And honestly, what interest does a nascent league have in terms of undercounting the attendance of any of the teams in the league, especially when you consider that the long game, the end goal for this is for the teams to be owned by investors. And I work with investors. I am around investors. I'm even an investor to a certain degree. Not in this league, but in other places. And what I can tell you is that people want to have a return on the investment. And when you consider the body of work of Birmingham, remember, Birmingham, when the USFL was a thing, the more modern iteration of it was a thing. They had the hub since 2022. So you cannot tell me that, oh, people don't know about the Stallions, people haven't heard of them. No, no, you had the hub even before the XFL came back in 2023 for its third iteration. So there have been advantages for you all in this league. And yet, when we look at the numbers, when we look at the market conditions, I've said this before, lowest retention, lowest median household income of any of the teams in the league by a pretty good margin. When you start to look at these things and you look at the overall body of work, and especially the winning free times, then I do not see how a potential investor is going to get a return. I don't see it. It's almost the equivalent of having a Waffle House in DC. It's not going to work. Having Ruth's Chris in North Dakota, that is not going to work. John Taffer's restaurant did not work in DC. Nobody wanted sous vide food that was barely better than stuff at Applebee's. So the point is that it's not that it doesn't mean that Birmingham is a bad place. It's just that, again, you have to think about what is the best long term for this league. And I think that there is going to be a lot of conversation in this offseason about where Birmingham is going to be. I think if there's going to be any relocation that's going to happen in terms of moving Birmingham, the Stallions, to another city, maybe to Boise, who knows? Maybe those talks can reopen again. Now, granted, those talks about Boise predated Rapoli's involvement in the league, but if there's going to be a movement to another city, it's probably not going to happen until 2028, when Oklahoma City comes in and another team comes in. Hopefully the Michigan Panthers return, in that they were far more deserving of being kept, by the way, than Birmingham, if you really want my honest opinion. But again, I will not be shocked, though, if there's movement in 2028, but I also won't be shocked given the sort of itchy finger that Rapoli has got, that he makes a move in 2027. Now, maybe the move is to Hoover Met. Maybe that's the case, but this is going to be a storyline that I think those who follow this league, obviously a lot of you do, of course, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this program. I think one of the big storylines heading into this offseason is what is going to happen to Birmingham. All right. I'll just say, by the way, stopping the count may work in some circles, but not when it comes to sports leagues. Just saying. And now it's time to pick them. All right, so the playoff pickup. Now, during the regular season, I had 65% of the picks correct. I guess the saying that D's get degrees is very, very, very fitting here. But looking at the Defenders Storm game, first up on Sunday, I think easily this is going to be one for the Storm. They're going to cook something up over in Daytona Beach. I would say, had Jordan Ta'amu been healthy, and especially with some of the playmakers that are going to be returning in this, I think that this result may be different. I think there's a lot to be said about some of this back-to-back games. And initially, the thought of Orlando traveling to Columbus, and then only to find out that, oh, now you're going to be heading to Daytona Beach, which, is not a terrible distance away, that sort of thing. So who knows, maybe that could have done a bit of a number on them, but I do think that the Storm are going to win this stuff. And the Kings, the Battlehawks, the Kings are going to win this one, I believe. This is something that the Battlehawks, these last few weeks on offense, not particularly great. I think Chris Redmond, he is definitely shaping up to be the rookie coach of the year. And by the way, I will say, when it comes to the rookie coaches, of those that had absolutely zero experience, because remember that Pearl was a position coach, so I'm not including him in this. The record was 13-17. When the league was the XFL, that was 6-24. So at least we can say that the rookie coaches, not as horrible as believed, but I think the Kings, they have been, as I've mentioned many times, they have peaked at the right time. They made that final game, regular season game, very, very entertaining, and I expect them to bring the entertainment to the Dome. And oh, here we go again. Another spring football has sprung alert, and this time for this show, because now with the United Bowl, and just let me point out, by the way, that I'm sure that the league will prefer, and I'm not saying that the league has its thumb on the scale on this, I'm sure that, but I think that the league will prefer having DC in this, just for the optics. I think that this will definitely make Audi very, very full. But definitely the United Bowl is going to be, I think, regardless of the teams that are in this, will be a lot of fun. And we are going to have some special programming that will be coming around the United Bowl. So next Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a special edition of Spring Football Has Sprung, 8 p.m. Eastern. So it's going to be a little later than what time that we usually put this stuff up. But definitely you want to subscribe here anyway, youtube.com/the channel, so that you are the first to get it straight to your inbox when the episodes does drop, 8 p.m. Eastern, so right before the World Cup, the USA game. So as you are out and about, hopefully you will watch that episode before the World Cup truly kicks off. And then on Saturday, the day of the United Bowl, we are going to have a special Spring Football Has Sprung, the 2-minute drill. That will be fun. That will be at 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. So again, just an hour before kickoff. Also, we will have, of course, our usual complement of shorts. Hopefully have some quick reactions and things throughout the week. Hopefully leading up to this and on the day as well. I'm going to be there. This is going to be really, really a lot of fun. And I think regardless, again, of the teams that end up in the United Bowl, I think this is going to be a great, great look for DC and a great look for Audi Field. Audi Field is a great venue, by the way. They have done such a great job over there. It's just really, really fun. So for anybody that's coming out to the United Bowl, you're going to have a lot of fun. So do definitely stick with us for the shows, and we're going to have our season finale of this show the following Friday on the 19th of June. So I hope that you will join us for all of these right here, youtube.com/the channel. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Do enjoy the games on Sunday. And until I see you again, please, please No trouble in the end zone.